hello. I would like to welcome Bray Ford and Matt Cox and Brianne Ford to Deep Roots. We are going to talk today about some of the issues surrounding the social justice, and we're going to have conversations that will give their perspective as friends that grew up in an area that is predominantly a white community. So I would like you guys to take a moment to introduce yourselves. We'll start with you, Bray.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bray Ford, and it's a pleasure to be joining and sharing a little bit of my experience growing up in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, to talk about some things that happened in my life, both socially and academically, and things that made me and showed me the type of man that I want to be today, but also open my eyes up to deeper issues that are going on in this country.
Thank you, Bray. Mac, can you introduce yourself?
Bray, first of all, I want to thank you both for inviting me on, to talk about these things, about basically, my relationship with you all. So I really appreciate the opportunity. Bray and I have been friends since elementary school days, playing football together. And I'm now a 27-year-old man, professional who works in sales and marketing. And Bray and I have stayed in touch up until this point and plan to do so, until we're well into the future. So again, thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining. Brianne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Brianne. I also appreciate being a part of this conversation. Kind of thrown in last minute, just based off of some of my experiences as well. But I'm really just a bystander, just to experience just this conversation and the need for it. And just some things that I'm going to learn from just hearing from a different perspective and both Bray and Mac. So I'm excited to hear this, and I may jump in a couple of times throughout the conversation.
Thank you, Brianne. So basically what this format looks like is it's going to be very organic. We're just going to have a discussion. I'll start it off with asking Bray to share his experience growing up here in Bethel Park.
Looking back at my experience growing up in Bethel Park, I have a lot of good memories from the time I was a child all the way up and through high school. There is also some memories that are fond of me that really stuck out and showed me that I was a little bit different, from name calling to judgments kind of cast by select few people. But it was also just a reminder that, I was a little different. So starting academically, most of my teachers, to me, were great teachers and great educators. I'm actually in the education field right now. And I really thank the ones that were good and instilled some important skills that, I'm trying to give back to students now. But there were those teachers who doubted me or told me, I would never make it to college based off my academics, not really paying attention to, what was going on in the underlying issues or things that might have been going on behind the scenes, but instead they cast a judgment. And that had a lasting effect on me, but it also motivated me into, proving them wrong and also, giving me a little, chip on my shoulder to, drive forward. As far as like, I would say middle school, that's when I started realizing, that I can't do certain things like in the community or certain things like if I'm in the stores or when I go to the mall or something like that, I might get a little bit of a different look walking in and out of stores and, just opening my eyes. I still was kind of blind because I grew up, I would say privileged compared to a lot of people. Because I got to, enjoy in a lot of life's nicer things. And, I started realizing just, people will look at you differently because of your skin color, but I didn't really pay attention to it, if that makes sense. Moving on to high school, it was a little different. Now I'm starting to, hear a little slights about, you may not, the only reason you're getting attention for football is because, you're Black and I'm, my stats are just as good and I'm white, but you're going to get the looks because of your skin color. It wasn't coming from many of my friends per se, but I would hear that from a couple upperclassmen, guys that were a little older than me, and kind of desiring the same attention that I was getting in football. So that kind of was a reminder that, I see people are looking at me a little different, instead of like, I just felt like I never got full credit for just being like a good football player, just being a good person. You get surrounded in like all this attention, and all this stuff comes with being a good athlete, which can kind of make you blind to like the real views and real like vision that people have on you. So I feel very fortunate for being able to be in that light, and be able to be like talented at a sport, until is where I was kind of blinded to things and kind of got a pass and little nod on things. But there was also that, that stigma that you're only this because of the way that you look, or you're only that. So that was like just eye-opening for me. And then as far as socially with my friends, I love them to death. Like the friends that I've had in high school, like still to this day, to the day that I die, they're gonna be my boys, because they show me love. Even if we have disagreements or ups and downs, like we can always just get on a phone call, or call each other, text each other, and it's gonna be the same thing. Because at the end of the day, I think we instill something in each other too, to like give each other a little drive and passion to drive for more. So like if we see some of our buddies doing something good, like that, just motivation for us to continue our personal journey. So I really appreciate them for that, because those are people that you want in your corner. And there was not too many like times where anything would happen like with our friend group, or anything around our friend group that was racially motivated. And I really appreciate that, because looking back, like those are people that obviously did not judge me because of the way that I looked, and accepted me for exactly who I am. So that part was nice. But I would say definitely in the community, when I got to college, and coming back home, I'm like dating my girlfriend then, but now wife, and just playing tennis. This is just a quick story. Playing tennis up at the high school, and a couple people rode by screaming, derogatory terms out the window that you don't expect to hear, especially somewhere where you grew up when you're raised, and you really didn't get that much. But you come back, and I grew my hair out. I look a little different, and then people feel obligated to say something, that should never be said to anyone. But overall, my experience in Bethel Park, it's been enlightening, to say the least. It's been a blessing too in other parts, in other aspects, because we grew up in a neighborhood that was safe, and we're able to grow comfortably and safely without really being introduced to a lot of negative things that we could have been introduced to. And I also had a great support system with my family, so that kept me grounded and kept my head on good shoulders. But I think also having good friends was a benefit. But there is some underlying issues to me concerning the way teachers need to just be educated on certain things. Sorry, I'm jumping all around here, but I'm just thinking back to like just reading some books and stuff, just to go back to academics, like, because I think this would be important, especially since I'm in the educational field. But just being considerate of certain books and certain derogatory terms that are in books, I feel like they should be really considered not being read in class. Try to find something that, or a different way to introduce that, and also make people aware of it without making students in your class uncomfortable or hard for them to sitting there and listen to that stuff. But
what kind of books are you talking about specifically?
Like The Mice and Men, I can say for one. I don't like that book at all. I think it's one of those. I just don't think it's necessary for anybody to read in school. And it's derogatory towards certain ethnicity. Not to say if it was Black, white, Asian, any race, ethnicity, Indian, Native American, anything. I just don't think that you should be reading anything that's derogatory when that can be affecting some part of your student body. Other than that, I had great teachers. I had great friends. There was great mentors, great coaches, great principals, great people just in the community in general where I grew up, where I feel like they showed me a lot of love and helped me to become the person I am today. A lot of my friends' parents, a lot of them showed me a lot of love and brought me under their wing. It would give me an opportunity to just experience who they are as people and give me a little bit of love back as well. And I appreciate all that. So I saw both sides of the table, but there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. And I think like just a conversation, just asking people their perspective it's important, and I appreciate the opportunity to share mine. That's
Thank
all
you.
I got for you guys.
Thank you very much. That was
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
So Mac, tell me about a little bit about your experience in growing up in Bethel Park, but also in hanging out with Bray and getting to know other people that did not look like you or live like you did.
Yeah. I guess you can go back as far as kindergarten for me. Maybe, you know, it's no secret, right, that Bethel Park is predominantly made up of Caucasians. You know, I think that there might even have been a stat out there that I read in years past that maybe one of the whitest communities in America. And so for me, you know, my and that's by like percentage, you know, of people who live in the community. Um, and so for me, you know, it was never something that I had to think about, right? It was never something that I had to go to school and wonder what other people thought about me based on the color of my skin.
Mhm.
I went to school and I looked around, and everyone that I saw at school had the same color skin as me. You know, they could have been my, you know, my neighbor, could have just as easily been a member of my family, just in terms of the color of our skin. You know, I looked around and I never felt that. And that was obviously my experience. I stayed in the Bethel Park school system from the time I was in kindergarten all the way through high school. I graduated from Bethel Park, um, and the primary makeup of my friend groups were always white. That was just the majority of the people that were around me, and ended up, you know, kind of just being that way until I got into middle school when Bray and I met each other. I think it was in 8th grade. I think is when kind of the inception of our friendship started, where we had this thing that was, you know, just a commonality in football. It was something that we both played and something that we both did, both enjoyed, and something that united us, you know. And I remember that kind of my only focus from about 8th grade until I graduated high school seemed to be, how can I be a good football player? That was the main thing that I focused on. Um, and so my thing, I think, whenever I was growing up, was that I always wanted to be around the people that were the best at playing football. It ended up being that Bray um, uh, always ended up being one of the best football players on every team that I was ever on. Like I said, actually, we played on a team whenever we were younger and like Pee-wees. And even then, it was just one of those things where obviously Bray's skin color was different, but it didn't, I didn't acknowledge that, because the fact that he was good at playing football superseded any kind of difference that we would have had. And so I wanted to be associated with him because I knew that he was a good football player. And that's not to say, you know, I guess looking back, I didn't examine maybe how well other people, how other people treated Bray. Again, I think growing up, you're very ego driven, and more than anything, you know, through those formative years of your life, you're trying to figure out, how are people looking at me, right?
Mhm.
I don't know that I spent all that much time really considering what his experience might have been like growing up in a district that was predominantly white. All that I knew was that he was a kid that, based on merit on the football field, when you would put him in and we would play football together, he was somebody that you wanted on your team. Whether it was football, whether it was basketball, whether it was any sport, he always ended up being the best one on the team, on the field. And that was always something that I wanted to associate myself with. And I think that we were able to build a pretty cool friend group around that, based on that commonality that we all wanted excellence in terms of athletics. So I know that that's kind of a roundabout way of me saying that, you know, I don't know that I acknowledged that experience so much whenever growing up being your friend. Um, and I don't know that I had to, you know, I don't know that you ever asked me to do that. I think that you just appreciated being around us who were also trying to keep each other in check. Um, I do remember, you know, some scenarios where maybe I did acknowledge, like, okay. And I think the reason that Bray and I ended up being such good friends was he was somebody that I always looked up to. And whether he knows that, whether you know that or not, I remember you always just carrying yourself with a sense of maturity at a very young age. And I remember always being so impressed by that. And maybe looking back and reflecting on that, that might be a result of the way that you felt that you had to carry yourself in the community, because you felt that people were looking at you and judging you based off of a different standard or a different set of rules. But I remember being really drawn to, um, you know, just the way that you would carry yourself in the community, and just the maturity level that you would respond to situations, or the way that you would treat people, was always, again, just another thing that I wanted to be associated with. And I don't know what reason. I know that we're both January birthdays, and you know, maybe it has something to do with that. But you and I seem to have always seen the world pretty similarly in the way that we would want to treat people and the way that we would want to be treated. So I think that we gravitated towards each other for that reason too. But like you said, man, the experience growing up in Bethel Park, mine was obviously markedly different than yours based on the color of my skin. But have nothing but great things to say about growing up in the community that I did. If there was anything that I feel didn't go my way, I think a lot of the times it might have been a result of the behavior that I was exhibiting rather than the way that I was being treated. So I always felt like I was on a very playing field. I think that there were always things that I could have done better, maybe myself, in order to yield an outcome that would have been more positive for me. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. But again, you know, kind of going back to the friend group, it was just a merit-based thing. You know, for me anyway, it was just being around somebody else who I saw doing positive things and excelling in the things that he wanted to do, that I also happen to be interested in doing.
Thank you. That's a great perspective.
Awesome, bro. Thank you. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
Hey, Brian, did you want to share anything at this point?
No, but I loved hearing your story, both your experiences, because they were very different. But then, you know, but it's nice, like, to know and hear, like, you know, from both of you guys, that deeper than how anyone looked, like, you built your friendships off of something like common interest and like character, really, because that's what life comes down to, is who you are as a person and your character and what drives you. And I know that, you know, sometimes you don't have a lot of these conversations with the people who you love and your friends, but it's important, like, even as adults, to hear that, like, you know, why someone became your friend. And because sometimes we think it's surface, but to know that you both loved each other and had an understanding of each other that was deeper than just like the surface of what you look like, but because you guys liked each other as people. And, you know, your January birthdays united, maybe, like,
Yeah.
from
Capricorns, let's go.
yeah, to drive you guys in the same direction, like, from the universe perspective, like, you see life similarly, and that's the big thing. And like, that's the thing that I want, you know, the world to see, is that, like, that's what matters, like, your character and who you are, and less about the surface, but like, who are we as people. And that's my big thing. And that's where I feel like in our country and in this world today, like, we could just do a better job. So it's nice to hear from, like, you guys at a young age, like, you guys were those people, and then you're going to grow up, and you've grown up to continue to be those people who lead your lives that way. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Bri.
Thanks for your perspective.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, we all know that there were some incidents that were highlighted, unfortunately, over the summer through the pandemic and the social justice issues that have been happening in our country. And I know that when earlier part of the summer, when the incident happened with Mr. Floyd's murder, um, that there were some feelings that resulted in, and that it brought up in I know me personally, not not knowing how to navigate that whole thing, because even though there's this social justice issues, especially for African Americans, has always been an issue. It was now being spotlighted and televised, and there were video after video after video of some level of brutality that was occurring, and so that conjured up some deep rooted feelings. I know from my perspective, during that, you know, once you left the comfort of a place that you knew, Bethel Park, and you started going out into the world and seeing all of the, Bray, you traveled and you were in different parts of the country pursuing your desired craft. And Mac, I'm sure that you've been, exposed to a whole lot of things. And in college, you learned and were around people that did not look like the people that you grew up with. It was a more,
Mhm.
a time when you were finding out who you are and
Yep.
what your place was in this world. And so, or what it could potentially look like, because you didn't, we're always evolving. So, but you started getting to see different things that you didn't have, and have different experiences that you never had when you were home, whenever you were in Bethel.
For
Mhm.
So
sure.
from that kind of standpoint, what was it like for anybody can jump in and we can have just dialogue, but what was it like when you began to discover who you are? And at what point in time did you realize that the greatness that's inside of you was not based off of what you look like, but like Brianne said, like the content of your character, like what your purpose to bring, what God's purpose for you is to bring forth to this earth. So I
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about your feelings, but I also want to hear from you your perspective of the growth that you've experienced and being able to take what was rooted in you and begin to allow that to shine forth and make that your mission, your purpose in life.
hmm
Is
And
that a
I
lot to ask for?
I'm happy to start off there, because this is something that I've actually been thinking a lot about lately, um, in light of much of what's going on in the country. And like you said, it's not something that I really ever had to consider
Mhm.
growing up. Um, and it's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just what was. It's where my family decided to settle down and raise us as a family. And um, could you say that more emphasis could be placed on considering what your role is in the bigger picture of the world? Sure. But I've really taken it upon myself to really um, consider those things and ponder them. And I think that when it really struck me was I had the opportunity. I was never interested in traveling internationally um, until I got to college. I had some friends who were traveling abroad, and even that never interested me, because of the influence that I had of my family, where my parents and nobody that I knew was well traveled. Nobody that I knew or grew up around placed an emphasis on going to see the world and seeing how other people live. And I ended up making this friend in college who was a few years older than me, and she had had the opportunity to travel internationally to Europe, um, and basically sing. She was an opera singer, and so she would get these paid gigs to go to Europe and sing opera. And I remember going and traveling abroad, and the first place that I went was London. And London, very similar to the United States. We speak the same language. People look relatively similar to the people that I was growing up around. That wasn't much of a culture shock to me. But then when I went to my first foreign language speaking country, I went to Paris. So I was able to do some time in Paris. And I remember like looking at the way that they did things and just the different language that they spoke and the lifestyle that they lived and the culture that permeated through their day-to-day lives being a little bit different than what I had recognized. And then I went to Italy, and I did a trip throughout Italy, and where I was lucky enough to start basically in the northernmost part of Italy and drive and spend a week driving down to the southernmost part of Italy. And I remember, again, their lifestyle being so much different. It was a lot more laid back, a lot more lackadaisical than what I was used to here in the United States. And their values were a lot different than seemingly the ones that I was raised with, and the importance that they placed on those values. And I remember coming back, I could go into depth and give you a lot of context on what that trip was like for me. But I remember coming back from that trip and seeing the way that people were living in a totally different part of the world than the way that I was conducting my life day to day. And I remember it kind of hitting me over the head where I was like, whoa, they're people. They're the same exact thing that I am, different nationality, different race, different everything. They get the same 24 hours in a day that I get, and they're spending theirs so much differently than the way that I'm spending my time here. But it seems like the common thread in all of it is that they all want the same things. Everyone wants to be smiled at. Everyone wants to be welcomed. Everyone wants to be heard and understood at a deep level. And so no matter where you go, I've had the opportunity to travel to a few more places since then. No matter where I go, those are the common threads that I notice everywhere that I go, that if I smile, I'm polite to somebody, if I treat somebody the way that I would want to be treated, the interactions that I have are overwhelmingly positive. And so that's true of anywhere that I've ever gone in the world. I've got a good friend who lives in Pittsburgh now. He was born and he was raised in it's an African country, Rwanda, right? So I ended up making this friend, and somebody who immigrated from Rwanda to now the United States, and he's working in the United States as an accountant. I ended up meeting him, and I was just so fascinated by his story and what that looked like, making a transition as vast as leaving Rwanda and coming to the United States and working. And I remember him having such different experiences, and speaks a different language, had to learn English in order to come here and work. We would end up working out, and we would go on runs together. And once we were done having those runs, we would sit down and we would literally just talk about the world and talk about life. And it was so crazy that everything that he wanted out of his life were pretty much the same things that I wanted out of life, which was to get up in the morning, to be happy, to be accepted by other people, to love people, to be loved, and just share a pleasant experience while we're here on the world, and it comes down to those very basic rules. But to me, traveling and getting outside of your element and getting outside of that suction of what, maybe you're raised in that kind of echo chamber of whatever you're raised in, and all of the things that people are telling you, or the, you know, the traditions that have been passed down generation over generation, it couldn't be more important to me to get out of that and go pursue what the meaning of all of this is and how we do this the best that we can. So I know that that's kind of a long tangent, you know, but I think to me, it's been super important to just go get outside of your comfort zone. You know, it's another thing that you hear all the time: extend yourself outside of your comfort zone, and really just try to understand the world a little bit better, and it'll help you understand yourself. You can understand yourself, you can understand how to treat people better, and that makes everyone happier.
Yeah. What's
Thanks
your
for sharing.
perspective? Yeah, Mac, that was great. What was your perspective, Bray?
I mean, I didn't really travel outside of the country, but I mean, as soon as I got to college, it was apparent to me that I grew up, in, you know, kind of sheltered from a lot of things that, you know, potentially happen, and it happened to me pretty fast. I mean, there was ups and downs in college, but I quickly knew, like, you know, um, everything's not as handy dandy and nice as you think it is. You know, everyone's not gonna, you know, be as warm to you as everyone was warm to you back home in my bubble. People who knew me, and, you know, I built a reputation for myself, and you know, I got a lot more love off top at home than I did when I first went to college. But you know, I just, if it was saying hi to people, and like, or if it was walking on the sidewalk, you know, back from practice, walking to, you know, the dorm room or anywhere, you know, and there'd be people that, you know, just across the street, you know, instead of walking by me, and like that's things like, you know, I didn't really experience. So I was just kind of like, but when it started happening over and over and over again, you know, in different situations, I was like, okay, so they're crossing the street because they see me, you know what I mean? Like, and I started like, and
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I'm like, I would have said what's up to you, or like, have a nice night. But
Yeah.
just the perception that people had just off my image, you know, it was kind of just a culture shock for me, but also opened my eyes to, like, dang, like, you know, we got a long way to go. And like, if that, you know, if that's the case, then you know, I don't want anyone across the street, you know, when they're walking by me again. Like, you know, I was trying to figure out how to make people warm and welcome. But another thing for me was learning how to, you know, be amongst people that are like-minded, and you know, going toward goals that you want to be. So mine was like, I needed to go through some of the things I went through so I can get grounded, and also open my eyes up to the type of people I want to be around, and the type of man that I want to be in my life. So I had to learn how to pick and choose friends. I learned that some friends are there for a little bit, and then some friends are gone. And I'm talking about college here. And I needed that, because you have to you know, I had to learn how to let some things go so I can grow. And that was huge for me, because, you know, like Mac, we have big hearts. So it's easy to, you know, for people to gravitate toward us, but everyone that gravitates toward us, you know, isn't there to help elevate us. And that's a crucial and important thing that I learned. You have to pay attention to that, for the greater good of yourself, not to be selfish, but to be selfish a little bit, and in that aspect. And then just moving in some of the things that Mac was saying also. I mean, I know this to be true, and I hold true to this myself, is the way you treat people. It does have a huge impression. The way I was raised, and the way that I treat people, I normally get it reciprocated back, no matter what skin color they are. People do, for some reason, gravitate toward that. And I think, to piggyback off what Max said, is I think everyone wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to be loved. Everyone wants to, you know, walk down the street without someone crossing the street on them because of the way that they look. Everyone wants to walk into a store and shop and not have to worry about, you know, people that work at the store checking every hour that you're in to see like exactly what you're doing. Like, everyone wants that acceptance. And I think, like, it's important that if you realize it yourself, like Mac and myself do, you and Brian, I'm sure do as well. I mean, that's the start. And then being around people, having the conversation, like Max said, about finding out what people want and who people are and what drives them, what motivates them, and who they are on their, I mean, based off their character and based off like their lifestyle and things that they want to do, more than based off the way that they look. I mean, like the old saying we all know, you can't judge a book by its cover. So I think that it's important to just, you know, bring it back home to yourself and try to, you know, be that person and be the light that you want to also have in your life. And then, you know, you can maybe bring some people along with you just by, you know, you being yourself and doing what everyone knows is right. to do. But that's just a little bit of my experience in leaving, sheltered and bubble life of growing up in Bethel.
Yeah. And it is true that, I know for us, for you guys, full disclosure, Bray is my son and Brianne is my daughter. But I did try to create an environment where there was safety at home, and because I feel like the world would beat you up anyway, and so you needed to have a safe haven, a place where you could come and just be comfortable and be who you are. So I fought to create that environment for you all, so that you would be equipped to deal with the ugly that was in the world from my perspective. And I know that kind of sounds skewed, but I do know that as an African-American woman, that I experienced situations from the time I was entered school all the way throughout that told me who I was. And so it took years and years and years later. I wanted you guys to know early on who you were, so that nobody else was able to define that for you. And so years later, it took me so long to figure out who I was and my own worth and value. I wanted you all to have that before you entered in the world and somebody tried to tell you what your worth and value was, or to try to diminish who you are and what you can contribute, and for yourself and in your life and your family's life, but also for the greater good of the whole universe, So it's interesting to understand and see the little boys that were running around on that football field turn into and develop into wonderful men that are very thought-provoking and retrospective of what their life experiences have been, but can speak to the development of self, can speak to the appreciation for each other and how you show up in the world and what you want to give back. I would love to hear from you guys moving forward. What is it that you see your role and your responsibility is in kind of like healing the nation, healing our world, but just what and through your sphere of influence. So those people that you're around, who you engage with, if it's professionally or personally, what do you feel that you can offer, and how can you offer it in a way that effectuates change? And Brianne, you can speak on that as well, if you like.
I'll start this one off. I'll just say, personally, I'm a firm believer in this. I think, like I said before, everything starts with you. You got to be able to be that person that you want to see in other people first. You can't, if you're not doing it yourself, it's hard for other people to emulate or for you to be a leader for people that people want to follow. You know what I mean? I just think it starts with you. If you're not living that lifestyle, if you're not treating people like that, and you're in a position where you can have an impact on people. Me being a teacher, if I'm not treating all my students fair, and I'm working in the inner city of Columbus, so it's like a melting pot to me. I mean, there's so many different ethnicities, races, different socioeconomic statuses. There's so many different things you could say this is different, but then when I look at these kids in the class, I see nothing but the same. I see kids like their eyes wide open, wanting to be welcome, wanting to be loved, wanting to have attention, wanting to have the same opportunity to find and live out their dreams in this country that we all live in. So I feel like as a leader, I mean, I have to look at all of them each the same and treat them each the same with as much love and just as much, and give them as much opportunity as I give the next kid, no matter, what ethnicity, what race, what socioeconomic status. And I think that's my role. I think I can have a huge impact in that way. If I can also do some stuff in the community outreach and just help out where I can. And then, the biggest thing that you can give to anybody is love. So just keep being filled with love and showing people who you are, and it'll gravitate toward somebody and can potentially help the next person who can help the next person. And then that's how that wave can start, in my opinion.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, and it's so fitting that you went first there, and basically reached into my mouth and took the words that I would have said in my head, because and maybe that's the common thread, right? Of why we've been such good friends for so long, albeit don't constant contact like we did, for all those years when we were younger. Life happens, we get older. But I know that anytime I talk to Bray, we'll jump back in like we're, seniors in high school again and have conversations. But I've got chills kind of going down my spine because you essentially said exactly what I would have said, in that I'm not ignorant to think that I can change the world. I definitely don't have the answers on how to, solve these things and keep these things from happening. But what I do know, and I've been able to basically elicit change in my life a few different times and change who I am in pursuit of a better me a few times. The only way that I've ever been able to do that and continue to grow is by addressing the things that I know I can control within myself, through, disciplining myself, educating myself on these issues, amongst other things, and making sure that the things that I want to see in the world are happening in my immediate life and in my immediate circle first. That I'm showing up and being a compassionate person to other people around me first, to treating people around me the way that I want to be treated, and you know, it can't be underestimated how far that reach can really go if you just treat somebody one day, with respect when, or, maybe it's a bad day and you're just having a really rough go of it. And you have the opportunity to take the low road, and do something that that you shouldn't be doing, or take the easy way out. If you consistently make those difficult decisions and do the right thing over and over again, that's my hope, at least for the world, is that permeates throughout. So again, I don't have the answers on how to tell somebody else how to behave. All I know is that I can control what I do, and I treat everyone around me the way that I would want to be treated. And again, hopefully that reflects in the world some way.
Thank you guys for
Yeah.
sharing.
Uh-huh.
So from my perspective, it's very similar to Bray and Max. But I agree with Mac wholeheartedly, is like just taking a look at yourself and seeing how you could show up differently and show up, and you can be a better person. You can be a light for someone. And a day where, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what their experiences may be. You don't know their perspective or perception of any situation that's in front of you, because we all are sitting in we may be sitting in the same room, but we're sitting in completely different spaces in that room, and what we're seeing and what we're experiencing is completely different than the next person. So that's why for me, I love having the conversations that a lot of people are uncomfortable having, because it gives me a time where I can truly understand like someone else's perspective and understand that person, because I feel like conversations help you truly understand like the person's thoughts that they may not just outright come out and have, but understand who they are as a person better. And then you can kind of gauge how you handle those people and those situations in that time. And you can also learn a lot from just having a simple conversation of, how do you feel in a certain situation, or what is this experience trigger for you, because it's different for each person. So I think just having conversations that are uncomfortable, and then challenging the people around you, especially whenever you hear things that you may not necessarily say or do, challenging people to think different and look at things from other people's vantage point, because like I said, we can be sitting in the same exact room or in the same space, but we're experiencing that situation completely different. So for me, it's just having the conversation to understand how that moment, each like another person is experiencing that moment, especially if they're the minority, or if they're the majority, how are they experiencing that moment? Just because I want people to understand my vantage point. So I try to trigger those conversations so that we can all kind of understand where each person is coming from. So looking at myself first and then having those tough conversations, especially about like right now about what's going on in the world, is important for me. And that's where I feel like I'm able to identify like people who really truly care about me, and where I like what I'm going through in this time, because they're willing to have those conversations that a lot of people aren't.
Bree, you made such an important point that I wish that I would have thought about when I was talking before. But it's for me, and maybe it's because I'm comfortable talking. You know, I always have been. I've always, you know, Bray will tell you, he and I were always the ones in school talking to each other, and that deal. But I have had very few experiences in my life where I have sat down with somebody, and if I was paying attention to them and truly trying to listen to them and what it was that they were going through, that I was unable to genuinely understand the way that they might be feeling. And so it's something that I'm not sure why I feel that it's so important, but it's something that I do enjoy doing, is sitting down with people and listening to their experiences and having conversations. Because I think that ultimately it helps me grow as a person, and I can take what I've learned from that person's experiences and use that knowledge going forward in my life. So I guess if you're looking for a call to action, or if there's any way to do that, it's sitting down and just talking to somebody and having a conversation to try to understand what life might be like looking through their eyes.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation and listened to everyone's perspective about how it is vitally important for first us to love, get to know and love ourselves, but then to share that same love and respect and appreciation and value towards the people that are around us. We lose nothing, and I love this saying. You know, a candle never loses its flame by lighting another candle. We lose nothing, but we gain a greater amount of light in the room. So the more candles that we can light, and the more love we can share, and the more value we can add, just to allow ourselves and give permission to people to be 100% who you are, and be accepted by the content of your character as opposed to the color of your skin. So this is actually very fitting, because Martin Luther King's birthday is going to be celebrated next week, and it is a way that we can value and show value and appreciation for each other and for our nation and our world at large. We see what hate does and how it destroys. But the greatest thing that we can do is shine and show love to everyone. So I want to say thank you guys so much for joining this segment of Deep Roots. I pray that not only enlightens other people, but it continues to challenge us to be at our greatest selves. And before I close out, does anybody have anything else that they want to say or about this?
No, I just want to say thank you for having us. Thank you, Mac and Bray, for sharing your truths and your experiences, and just teaching me just some key values that I can carry on, and just be open to hearing new perspectives. And it was nice to see your beautiful faces and hear your beautiful voices. And thank you. And thank you, Mom, for putting this together.
Thank you, Bree. I love you guys.
Thank you.
so much. You
Uh,
have a,
All
you-
right,
you-
see ya.
okay, see ya.
Thank
See ya,
you.
Mac.
Hold on. So thank you, Bray, for always being a friend and really a brother to me. I know that I can call you anytime I need to, and just talk. And that'll always be something that I can have. Diane, thank you for raising such amazing children and giving me the opportunity to have friends such as them. And then Bree, thank you for being a role model. You know, we didn't spend all that much time growing up together, but it was clear that Bray had role models, you know, around him, people showing him the right way to live a life. And so thank you for being a role model to Bray. And thanks, Diane, for putting all this together.
Thank you, sweetie. You take care. And thanks for the work that you guys are doing in the communities. I really appreciate that. And we just have a lot of work to do. So we're going to continue in that vein.